I'm Mark Hudson and I've made a film about Alan
First
Davie.
met Alan.
Right, so tell us a little
Can you
bit
tell
about
me how you first started collecting?
Well, I think originally we did sort of things like I used to see this story of
Well, and how long were you in this field?
Late 1950s.
I've been working the Alan Davie gallery here is part of
On one hand, he was a shrinking, shy, neurotic, hypochondriac wreck. And on the other, he was a kind of Nietzschean Superman who could do anything.
As far as I'm concerned, colour is everything, and strong colour. If you gave me that, I mean, that's the first thing that would hit you.
He gave you the feeling you could do what you liked.
You were invited to Alan Davie's studio. What were the first impressions you got?
This house, which was full of wonderful artefacts which he brought from all over the world, which was magnificent. The background to him, really.
Yes. And what impact did his studio have on you?
Huge, because he has the most efficient running art studio I have ever known an artist to have. He documents everything. He had huge card indexes and so on at the time, and every painting and sketch he'd ever done, I think, was probably recorded meticulously.
One day he was outside as I was wandering, going to have my lunch again, and he was throwing all sorts of things into a bin. He got one of the a big old packing case or a storage case, and he was standing looking at one of these pictures, these etchings. And I'm throwing stuff away. He said, "If you want it, take it away. You can have them." And I took them away. And I've done nothing with them since, I'm afraid.
When did you first meet Alan?
Well, when I did the project for Paintings in Hospitals, I went to Gamel's to go and see him, and I took all the necessary drawing material. He wasn't really interested in me going to his studio. He wanted to be in the print shop and smell the smell, feel the possibilities. And so we set about making the print as a sort of, it's a bit of an act of duty really, because he was giving the addition to Paintings in Hospitals, and it had to be done to their schedule and to their deadline and their scale and format and so on. They weren't prescriptive, but it had to be done. And actually he was much more open-ended in his approach on every level. And so once we'd made that print with him, I said, "Come on, Alan, let's open the doors." And we made 3 big prints. The one that we looked at earlier, Kip's Horse, was one of those. And then we made a big batch of monoprints, which got really, really experimental. They're much freer than the Zurich ones. And then that led on to the 32, 34 editions that we made in the space of a couple of years, I think, 2-3 years. Yeah. From about 2000 to 2003, something like that.
I said, "Can you sit? Can you perch to paint?" No, everything's much too big, I have to do this. And I said, "Well, how about having a rest from time to time?" No, can't do that. So he wasn't going to change what he was doing, so even giving him coping mechanisms didn't work. But he always stood. He worked on enormous pieces. He was leaning forward all the time, putting a static load on his back. And that was really what was exacerbating his problem.
In 1997, my son Richard was involved in mounting an exhibition at the Fine Arts Society, Bond Street, called From Austerity to Affluence, and it dealt with post-war design, and it was accompanied by an illustrated book. And Richard asked me to contact Alan to ask if he would allow one of his pictures to be used in the exhibition, which he was happy for us to do. And I have the title. It's entitled untitled Female, 1951. An oil on board, sized 39 by 49 inches. Unfortunately, it was too late. We had it too late to put in the catalogue as an illustration, but it is listed in the catalogue. But it's just another example of how happy he was to cooperate well.
He is there, I mean, as one of the significant abstract kind of painters, and very significant from the UK as being at that pivotal point, and knowing all of those people that he did, and time away in Venice, and the Peggy Guggenheim links. You kind of have to acknowledge that as important. So maybe they weren't necessarily people that I knew, but I think an older generation knew of his work, and he was much more substantial within that.
He was, I think, a bit upset that nobody had come along and said, look, let me give you a big retrospective. I think that deep down upset Alan, if I'm honest. I think deep down, but he was so modest in a way. I think he was modest.
The first obvious one really is tell us about when you first knew about Alan Davie, and perhaps when you first met him.
Right. It was in 1956 that I first met him. He came to Leeds University as a Gregory Fellow of Painting, and it took me a long time to realise that it was the way that Davie worked that was really the secret of his genius, I suppose, in that he was really overthrowing conventional ways of working because he believed in the inner creativity. So instead of starting out with an idea in his head and doing something, what he was really doing was the act of painting and discovering what happened during that act of painting.
Yes.
And that was the revolutionary thing.
He never said, oh, don't disturb me or whatever, but it was just, that was the life I knew, so I didn't really think, I never really used to go in there and question him about what he was doing. It was just at the end of his life, when I used to go and visit him, we used to go, and I'd sometimes say to him, Dad, how do you manage to just keep doing it? He said, I don't know, it's just there. I've got no option. He said, I couldn't not paint, and I said, I just couldn't conceive that he had that imagery in his head all the time. I don't know. To me, it was just...
So do you think it was a kind of compulsion, that, in a sense, or was he sort of in control of it and he knew what he wanted to do? And
I don't know. I think he just had to do it. That's what he used to tell me. He said, I haven't got an option. Yeah. I have to paint. Which is quite extraordinary.
Why is Alan Davie important, and what is his legacy?
Well, I think that's one of the things we're trying to tackle at the moment. It's very interesting that there are two exhibitions that have been going on or about to go on. One at the Wakefield Gallery that is going to show the relationship between the work of David Hockney and Alan Davie. And so that's particularly interesting, that he's seen as paired with Hockney. And then recently there's been a large exhibition in Covent Garden in the gallery of Damien Hirst, and that gallery shows Damien Hirst's own collection. And that and we went to the exhibition, and there was an enormous part of the Damien Hirst collection that is given over to Alan Davie's very large and vigorous works from the 1950s, the 1960s and the early 1970s. But I think it's time now to revive his reputation, to think about his position in relation to all these people he knew and connected with, and to think about his key ideas, those of spontaneity, and particularly I think what gives him international significance is his understanding of indigenous cultures within a global context. And that is relatively unique within the British scene.
Tony, you're one of the new interviewers for this project. How did you feel the first time you had to do it solo?
I was very nervous, certainly before I did it, but I was fortunate that there was a team having an interview before me. So not only did I see the camera work and all the technical preparation, which was interesting, but I was lucky, I was fortunate to have the experience of watching somebody who knew how to do it properly, gave me some guidelines. But at the end of it all, I must say I did enjoy the experience. I thought it was fabulous. But you're not an amateur. This is kind of one of the things that you do. How did you find the experience?
Doing things on camera is new to me as well. I'm a radio interviewer. That's what I've done in the past before. But I was very lucky because when I joined the BBC, I worked with some amazing professionals, producers and presenters. And one of the greatest things I saw happen with an interview was with Andy Peebles. And we were interviewing Paul Simon. And Andy had got to know that Paul was a real baseball fan, and there'd been a very important match the day before, hours before, and he hadn't yet got the result. Andy walked in there and he had the result in his hand. He says, "There you go, you've won." The interview, I mean, Paul could be a bit awkward to work with, but the interview, he was an absolute dream. Whatever Andy asked him, he got. So I would say if you can have that pre-conversation, find out something that will actually make the whole interview chime, you're in.
Very good. I can see how that would have worked for him. And as a professional who knows, he's done his homework.